Shalom everyone, I'm Amir Tsarfati here from Connect in Galilee, and welcome to another chapter of our Anker-Podcast. Today with me, Sammy Yahood, a what I call social media warrior, Krav Maga instructor, and an outspoken activist. Shalom Sammy, how are you?
Amir, thank you for inviting me. I'm doing great. You missed out a proud Brit.
A proud Brit, exactly. But you moved to Israel. You're an Israeli right now. You speak Hebrew. I actually heard you speaking Hebrew, and I was impressed. How long have you been studying the Hebrew language?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Jewish first, but born and raised in London. I've been studying Hebrew properly for the last 2-3 years, maybe 3 years, mostly through an application on my phone, music, and my visits here before making Aliyah. I studied at school. I went to Jewish schools in London, but I never really paid attention. I didn't really understand the significance or the importance of my Jewish identity or even Israel, which is a bit of a shame because I spent so many years at Jewish schools. It took me to leave the Jewish community to really understand the importance.
Amazing. And that's the story of many Jewish people all around the world, by the way, not only the Jews in the UK. But Sammy, you're a fighter for not just the Jewish people, but also for free societies, resisting Islamic extremism and also oppression. And, you know, I just came back from London after I recorded an audiobook there. And I must say, London is not the same London I used to know 10 years ago and 15 years ago. I'm sure you also feel that it's a different place.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned yourself, you didn't do much in London outside of your hotel room and your studio.
Correct.
And I told you that was a wise decision. London is a jungle, and not in a good way. It's changed considerably. And the way I describe the British people is they're being gaslit into submission. It feels like just only now they're starting to wake up to it. But in London, a phone is stolen every 6 minutes. Between 1 in 10 and 1 in 12 people in London is an illegal migrant. It's a scary place.
And do you see a correlation between illegal immigration and crime?
Oh, absolutely. I think rapes have increased by 800% since the year 2000. And it's not because of white supremacy or far-right extremism like the government and the BBC would like to make you believe.
Well, you know, honestly, as an Israeli-born first generation in the country after 2,000 years, it's a little bizarre for me, I would say, to still see Jewish people feeling comfortable elsewhere. I travel around the world. I see Jews in Germany. You know, I see Jewish people in Switzerland, in Belgium. I see Jewish people in France. And with all that is going on in Belgium and in France, in the Netherlands, to still see Jewish people there thinking that it's okay and it's normal to live there kind of bothers me a little bit. But I know, and this is where I want to ask you about, what is it like to be born as a Jew in a foreign country, not in Israel? I mean, do you feel that you don't belong there, or do you feel like you are part of that country first and then a Jew? How is it exactly in your mind as a Jew in a different country?
That's a great question. I grew up in northwest London, which is probably a community altogether of about 150, 200,000 Jews. It's a massive community.
It is.
It's fairly affluent, mostly middle class. It's an interesting reality because up until the age of 16, I was very much coddled and bubbled by that community. I never really left. I went to Jewish clubs, Jewish schools.
But what makes it Jewish? That's my question. Jewish clubs and Jewish school, what makes them Jewish? How Jewish is it when it comes, and it shelters you from what exactly?
Definitely sheltered me from the multiculturalism, the good and the bad aspect of it. But it just stopped me from realizing that there is a world outside of being Jewish. It's not all about learning the Torah. It's not all about religion. And it's not all about Israel. It's some to do with all of those things. but it was a school of Jewish people,
Mm.
at least for the vast majority. And likewise with the clubs, I went to Scouts, for example, and it was the Jewish Scouts. And up until the age of 16, I was very much coddled by this community. And then I left and went to public school. And at the time, I was still a little kid, quite honestly. I didn't really know my left and right. But I realized very quickly that I was vulnerable, that my background and my heritage was special, and it required protection. And
So you felt persecution?
I felt some persecution, but more isolation, alienation, less so than persecution, but I felt different immediately.
Did you feel any anti-Semitism?
Oh, for sure. Mostly from migrants at my college. I went to a mixed
Muslim
college.
migrants mostly?
Yeah. The Christians were always very pro-Israel wherever I went, whether it was the public high school and the university, but it was always the Muslims, always.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, it's hard for me to even grasp this whole thing. You know, as you said, it's not all about Israel, and it's not all about Torah, and it's not all about Hebrew. Here you are, you live in a foreign land, which you don't count as foreign land. But you know, it's interesting. I just finished writing a book on Ezekiel, and when I reached Ezekiel chapter 36, I saw how God promised through the prophet to gather all the Jews back from the four corners of the world, back to the land of Israel. But then he said this: I am gathering them back from the place where they profane my name. And then God says through the prophet, they profane my name by ways of being in a foreign land. And the foreigners are asking them, aren't you God's people? Why are you not in the land? In other words, God took offense in the fact that his people are not back in the land that he designated for them.
I think that tells the whole story of what we're looking at with the Jewish diaspora today. I think we are supposed to be an Ol Lagoyim, the light to the nations. We're supposed to set the example as supposedly God's people. And we're not doing that. I think today we're actually setting the example. Our middle class, comfortable and complacent diaspora communities are setting the example for exactly how Western society goes wrong. We are comfortable and therefore complacent, and we are acting exactly how we acted in the 1930s in the face of existential threats.
These are strong words, but in the 1930s, to their defense, there was no State of Israel, there was no IDF. It was a very unstable place. God has not yet, as Isaiah the prophet says in chapter 66, can a nation be born at once? Can God bring Zion to deliver and not open her womb? In other words, it was an amazing, miraculous birth of a country overnight on May 14, 1948. And so up until then, maybe I can understand why people would be afraid to come to I guess, malaria and terrorism-infested area that was not exactly that developed. Right now, this country is the leading country in almost everything, and yet there's about, I would say 40% of the Jews worldwide are not in Israel. And I find it interesting, but I think I see a change right now. Do you see a change? Do you see a wake-up, or do you think they're still asleep?
I think, unfortunately and rather shamefully, the change is more of a push than a pull. And when I say that, I mean the Jew hatred around the world is the push. And people are less. That's why you see Tel Aviv, there's lots of French people, because they understand. I think the British Jewish community where I grew up is one of the most comfortable because we were never occupied. The French Jewish community were occupied, and they understand what it means to have this existential threat really on their doorstep and through their door. The British Jews and maybe the American and Canadian Jews, I think, are the most comfortable because we haven't quite experienced that. And we're seeing the push send a lot of Jews to make Aliyah. But you just have to look at the Bible to see that only 20% of the Jews left Mitzrayim, left Egypt, left slavery under the commandment of God. you know, they say the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. I think there's an element of that. I always go back to the word comfort. It's all comfort, comfort zone. Your comfort zone is where you feel safe, but it's also where you stagnate and almost you regress. And I think around the world, if there's great Jews, they're great usually despite the fact that they're Jewish. And in Israel, you can be great because you're Jewish.
Yeah, I agree with you. It stands, by the way, always with how people take the word of God in their lives. And to begin with, God intended all of us to live here, and he did bring us over here. And then we left him, so he allowed us to be taken over and driven out of the land. And then we felt comfortable where we were and refused to come back. And the diaspora from Babylon was only of the tribe of Judah, basically. And for the rest of the tribes, they were all gone. But then here you are, and it's 2025, and almost 2 years into our most amazing existential war on 7 fronts on the ground. But then you have the information war, you have the media war, you have anti-Semitism worldwide. This is by far the most challenging war Israelis have ever faced, because we know how to fight the enemy on the ground. I think what we see now is that the media dimension and the worldwide reaction to what's going on here took so many Israelis by surprise. And this is where you come into the picture, because one of the things that I noticed about you is that you understand the power of social media. Not that you call yourself a social media influencer, but in essence, you do it. But it seems like something happened to you on October 7th in light of everything that was going on. Tell me, first of all, where were you on October 7th?
I was at home.
You were at home in the UK?
In London, in northwest London. And I woke up to a call. My phone will never wake me up unless I want it to. It's across the room. It's on Do Not Disturb. And I'm getting a spam call from a friend here in Israel. She's a lone soldier. And she tells me to call my cousin. I call my cousin. He's one of 5 boys, and his father's a rabbi, and he still lives in northwest London.
And you called him, where was he?
He calls me from Jerusalem. He's getting his gear on and headed straight to combat on the morning of October 7th. He calls me, he tells me, we're at war, you have to go to my house and wake my family up. You have to wake my parents up. And it's Shabbat morning.
Yes.
And his dad's a rabbi.
Yes.
And a holiday, exactly.
It's a double Shabbat.
Yeah. So I was shocked, but I was halfway into the car and I'm still not understanding what's going on. And I get to his house, I wake them up. I put them on FaceTime on Shabbat Simchat Torah morning, and I'm sitting there on the other side of the camera crying whilst he's speaking to his eldest son and his second eldest son, and he doesn't know when he'll speak to them again. But they're both younger than me. My younger cousins, they used to come to my house and steal my toys. And then they made Aliyah 5 years before me and both served and are currently serving to protect the state of Israel. That's where I was on the day. And then I did security later on that day for the Jewish community. Years before October 7th, I was teaching self-defense, Krav Maga.
So you were always into that?
I was always into that. I used to train self-defense. I've trained for a long time. I knew the world would never be the same again from that moment. And that was sort of confirmed on the Monday morning when I went into my corporate job, a rather conservative environment in the center of London, and people were treading on eggshells around me. People were saying less to me that day than they would usually. And they'd known I'd been in Israel twice that year. They'd known that I have family there. People wouldn't say anything. People said nothing about it. And I knew not only would the world never be the same, I knew that we would never be treated the same, which was confirmed. How many days did it take for the media to flip on Israel before Israel had hardly
30
reacted?
days maybe.
If that. And I knew that I would never be able to view the world the same again. I would never be able to focus on something that wasn't my purpose, that wasn't for a greater cause, and that wasn't my consulting job. That was the fight that we were in. And I've always had this element of, I don't want to say guilt, but sadness, because I've got a rather bad injury on my spine, and I've had it since I was 17, and I've always wanted to serve in the armed forces here, and I can't as a result. So it delayed my aliyah by about 5 or 6 years, but also it gave me the feeling of added responsibility to do something on
To find your own way.
the diaspora front. So I still felt like I wasn't doing enough teaching self-defense and doing security, etc., multiple times a week as volunteering. I knew for a few years that if I use my voice, if I use social media, I could spread a good message. I've never really enjoyed being in front of a camera or speaking so much, but the time had come. I realized my responsibility trumped my desire. So very quickly I gave up my career, and I started by going to these jihadi anti-Israel marches in London. I was wearing a keffiyeh, which I already had from my travels, and I didn't buy one for the occasion. And I went and started interviewing the protesters, because rather naively, I thought I can change people's minds. I can have a discourse with these people, which I was very quickly proven wrong. And I'm glad I came to that conclusion pretty quickly. So I changed my approach. I realized the only way to confront these people, you see the weakest of the weak people. And there's two real types of people: the left, the hard left, and the hardline Islamists. There's no real in between. And the only way to confront them is by being strong and sure of your moral compass.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what we're missing. Up until we had Trump, all of Western politics is this wishy-washy, pandering to both sides, not really doing anything sort of politics.
Because the Trump is a man that when he sees evil, he calls evil evil. And when he sees good, he calls good good. For him, there is a good side and a bad side, and there's no way you can be wrong about that. And he's not politically correct, obviously. But you kind of saw the depth of the Muslim takeover in your country then, and it felt like you need to do something about it.
I immediately saw, I've just made a video explaining what this weird phenomenon is: the Red-Green Alliance, the Socialist, Communist, and the Islamist Alliance. And that's, like I just said, it's exactly what you see present at these jihadi marches from the very beginning. And it was very clearly coordinated. And I couldn't really get my head around it at the time. I'd actually just been to the places like Egypt and Mexico and witnessed very stark differences in reality and abundance and freedom, etc. I still couldn't get my head around why were they banding together. I read a bit more into it, and you see a very similar reality in pre-Islamic Republic Iran, with the socialist students teaming up with the Islamists, and then guess what happens to the socialist students? And my conclusion was that the societies end up in the same end result. They end up with this weird and very tyrannical and oppressive two-class structure: the oligarchy government class with the billions, and then everyone else. And that's both the Islamist society and the communist society ends up that way. And they both hate freedom on any scale: freedom of speech, freedom of political or religious belief.
And they are fighting for freedom, freedom for Gaza, freedom for, from colonialism, freedom from genocide, freedom, all of these empty, hallowed words, and that obviously they're not exactly standing behind him. Earlier, before we started, I said to you that every time I see those protesters, I am amazed how dumb they are in their shallow arguments, and them not even knowing basic things. But then you said something very interesting. You said, actually, they're very smart. So elaborate on that.
You mentioned that they're not educated. And
True,
I think
you're
that
right.
many of them are educated, and that's the real problem.
But the problem is the education.
We've had a very overt infiltration of our education for decades, especially in the US. The number one donor to US universities is Qatar. And it's not because they want our kids to grow up as proud Americans. It's because they are teaming up with other enemies of state, the Red-Green Alliance, to brainwash our kids into wanting to destroy our societies. And this Israel-Palestine conflict is this Trojan horse of ideology. And it's not about Israel, and it's certainly not about Palestinians or children dying, unfortunately, because they like to make you think it's because they've got the moral high ground.
Mhm.
It's actually about destroying the West. These universities I mentioned before, they're teaching people what to think and not how to think. They are brainwashing people with dogma and ideology, and not teaching people critical thinking, which
You
is why,
attended one of those.
yeah, I attended Westminster University, and it was just a jihadi encampment.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, people actually went to ISIS after that university, committed terrorist attacks after going to my university. And I was surrounded. I never got attacked at that university, but there was always this Palestine table by the entrance, and I would never fail to approach them and just be surrounded by Islamists. And yeah, that was
It's amazing, you know, because we have I think some hard proof that in the days leading towards October 7th, and certainly that morning, that's when they began their major push for marches in the streets and protests and everything. In other words, everything was pre-planned. Everything was well coordinated, waiting for the moment, and then they made that move. And as a Jew who lives in the UK, you felt like what? You felt like you're being played, that you're in the middle, you are the victim here, or you're the food that they're trying to feed the animals with?
I saw it happening years before. And
you already did.
The British society, as I mentioned earlier, it is a society I describe as being gaslit into submission. We have been trained to believe our government and believe our media. The BBC is a state media. It's taxpayer funded, and those funds are allocated by the government. And that is a dangerous game. It's
and
a
the
very dangerous game.
BBC will never call Hamas terrorists, by the way.
No. But years before October the 7th, on Ramadan, roughly 80,000 Muslims pray peacefully on the Al-Aqsa compound, the Temple Mount. And the BBC would highlight these. There would usually be roughly 200 anarchists, terrorists, who would store rocks and projectiles in Al-Aqsa, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And the perfect story for the BBC. They'd get their photos of the IDF in their stormtrooper outfit, and they would say, IDF soldiers storm mosque on Ramadan and arrest peaceful worshippers. And they did that at least 2 years in a row with virtually the same headline, the same photos, the tear gas, the arrests in the compound. It's the perfect libel, when obviously we know what these people were going to do with these projectiles and rocks, because the Jewish holy site is right below. And the next day after these stories released, I would be doing security, standing on a street corner, or doing mobile security, and we would witness and have to respond to anti-Semitic hate crimes, physical and verbal.
Amazing.
Virtually the next day or the same week, we were being
so how
directly
do you explain
libeled.
That? What's the purpose of the BBC by doing that?
Well, the BBC has been hijacked for many years
by who?
By Islamists, by radical leftists and Islamists. It's the same story as the universities and the government. We have the civil service in the UK, which is made up of unelected officials, and we know how problematic that gets.
So, do you see any hope? I mean, it's you're giving us this very doom and gloom report on what's going on in the UK right now, in media and universities and society in general. Is there any hope for England, for the UK?
Not without civil war.
Wow.
I am. I'm not much of an optimist. I'm very much a realist. I see things as they are. I see things very literally. And I like to view everything in life on a small scale and a large scale as how do we evolve to be? We've been given these illusions in our comfortable Western societies that peace is the norm, when peace is the tiny anomaly. We live in a world where we have danger so far from our doorstep that it seems like it could never happen to us.
Somebody said that since the end of World War II, there were altogether only 3 weeks of peaceful days in the world. I mean,
Well, we live these comfortable societies with all these luxuries and all these lefties shouting about their moral high ground when we live in a time where there's more slavery now than there ever has been in human history. And that tells you the whole story, doesn't it, really?
absolutely.
People are just desperate to shout about something. They've lost their identity and everything. But let's get back to the UK and Europe. I don't see a way with the power and the strength that the anti-Western party has in Europe and has in the UK.
What about America? Well, standing by
America is very much on the brink, and people don't want to admit it. That's why I'm going to America. I'm touring America. I actually fly on October 7th, and I'll be on the East Coast for 5 weeks, hopefully Texas as well. Texas has a special place in my heart.
Your girlfriend is from Texas.
She is, but also I spent about a month there before I even knew her.
Oh, wow.
I've never been to New York, never been to Miami, never been to LA, but I spent a month in Texas. Yeah. Don't ask why. But
it's pretty sad to see what's happening in Texas, by the way, also. The Islamic takeover there is on high speed.
And that's coordinated. Of course they would go after Texas, because Texas and Florida would be the two states that would put up the most resistance.
Yes. And if you break them, the rest is very easy. If both of them are infiltrated and fall, then the rest is easy.
Well, we've got Zoran Mahmoudi to be voted in. I hope not, but will be virtually the week I leave New York will be when that happens. So it could get rather spicy while I'm there. And I don't think the jihadis are quite ready for my visit. But back to the UK, let's talk about it on a governmental and an actual control level, and talk about it on the ground level. Qatar own more assets in London than the Crown. Yes. They own the biggest share of Heathrow Airport, the Shard, Canary Wharf, Harrods. The list goes, Sainsbury's. The list goes on and on.
All the luxury hotels.
The list goes on and on and on.
The Savoy.
I think a quarter of Mayfair, the most expensive part of London, at least a quarter of Mayfair is owned by Qatar. It's
Al Thani family.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a terrifying state of affairs. And that's just on a political level. We have I think
how come people allow, I know it's money, obviously, but how come Qatar is so powerful in the UK? What gives them so much power over other pretty powerful countries? That, it seems like Qatar is way more powerful in the UK and in London in particular than any other country. Why Qatar of all places? I know they have money and they pay their way for everything, and they bought their time for FIFA, and I mean virtually anything they want they can get because they pay their way. But is it like are the London officials that corrupt, or what's going on here?
I mean, to say they have money, Amir, is an understatement. Elon Musk has a lot of money with a B.
Correct.
Qatar, it starts with a T.
Yes.
Everything is child's play around the world to Qatar. And yes, we are that corrupt in the UK. The UK and Britain has been known to harbour Arabs for a century or longer, since we carved up the borders. There is a two-state solution. It's called Jordan.
Exactly.
The British drew it up. Since long before then, we've been harbouring Arab oligarchs. I don't know exactly when the Islamist encampment started. I don't know whether it was all the way from the start, but likely, because Islam has not changed. It's a tough one. But you have, for example, at least the last general election, at least 5 members of parliament were elected solely off of their support for Gaza. Nothing to do with Britain, British politics, anything on the ground in Britain. Just because they supported Gaza, they were voted in.
Supported Hamas, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And we have, this is a terrifying statistic, and please fact check me.
No. I actually, not only that I know that, I reported the staggering number of mayors now, in not just in London but all around London, that are one after the other. These are Muslim mayors in cities that don't even have necessarily Muslim majority yet, but they will, obviously. but it seems like this is the Muslim Brotherhood type of spreading of Islam. They're not necessarily spreading it by killing people first, but it's through society, through politics, through charity and all of that, through gaining some support in sports and other thing. I mean, you can see Qatar on every shirt of football players and other things like that. It seems like, as you said, I think 20 to 40% of the shares of Heathrow are owned by the Qatari family, which is
British Airways. I forgot to mention British Airways.
wow,
That's the whole story.
amazing.
But the terrifying statistic I want you all to fact check me on, because you shouldn't take my word for this. More British Muslims, so Muslims with British citizenship, have left and fought for ISIS than have fought for the British armed forces. Meanwhile, the King, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and the London Mayor Sadiq Khan are all telling us how
peaceful.
Thank you, British Muslims, for your contribution to society. You really, the diversity and no. We're being gaslit into submission, and the British people are only just waking up to this because of the coordinated government cover-up of the rape gang scandal, which is still going on.
Horrible story. I mean, I looked into it a few months ago. I couldn't believe how everybody's hiding behind Islamophobia, as if there is Islamophobia. There's no such thing, you know. No one is attacking Muslims for being Muslims. The only problem people have with Muslims is what Islam is promoting or allowing or encouraging. So let's get back to you. Obviously, Sammy Yahood is not exactly the name you were born with, but that's your name now. That's your newly created identity. And tell me about it. Creating a new identity. What for?
Well, my name is Samuel, and my parents did like to call me Sammy.
So Sammy is your name.
Yes, Sammy is my name. But Yahood means the Jews in Arabic.
Correct.
I have some Mizrahi Jewish heritage from Egypt and Syria. My grandmother's first language was Arabic. But I was rather lucky. I went traveling. I took a little sabbatical off of my career. I went traveling in 2023.
Really?
And I went to places like Egypt, Jordan. I spent time in Israel before I made Aliyah. I went to Mexico. I went across the world. And when I went into Egypt, I learned a hell of a lot being in Egypt. Not only that Arab culture is a beautiful thing, but that Muslims are just as much slaves to Islam as Europeans will be. The word Islam means submission.
Yes.
And they throw the word Yahood around the dinner table, like the British throw the word wanker around even more so. It's so commonplace to call out Yahood. It's just like a little how do Americans a cuss, a little slur. So I thought I'd re-own it as a good thing. You can't call me a Jew and expect me to be upset about it. So that is my identity, Sammy Yahood. Ana Yahudi. I'm a proud Jew, very proud Jew. I have a tattoo of a Star of David right here. And I reclaim that identity. I went to Egypt, as I said. I learned a lot about the dangers of Islam. And like you said, there's no such thing as Islamophobia. That creates the picture intentionally that it's an irrational fear. Phobia is an irrational fear.
Exactly.
Islam is a murderous ideology. Islam is an ideology that believes that people who do not submit to the will of Allah are not worthy of freedom or happiness or anything. They're not worthy of being even second-class citizens. And that's a murderous ideology. That is not an ideology that, as the Mayor of London would like to put it, is diverse and including and accepting. It's lies. And Muslims are allowed to lie to further Islam. There's a structure called taqiyya in Islam where they're allowed to lie, they're allowed to conceal and to disobey the laws of Islam to further Islam, which is exactly what the Mayor of London is doing to us. And it's So that's why I chose that identity, because I really wanted to lean into it. And I like to use the few Arabic phrases which I know to taunt the other side. And like I said, when I really realized that there's no changing these people's minds, I very quickly turned to we have to confront this threat, because I have a strong belief that the most dangerous people in society, aside from psychopaths, are the weakest people. The weakest people are the most dangerous people in society. And if you leave them unchecked, they will take over. From your high school bully to Adolf Hitler, these people are the most resentful, the most demoralized, the most jealous, and the most hateful. You don't get to a hateful place if you're strong
yes.
as an individual and you're happy with your identity, and you know. So we have to confront these people, and this political correctness culture comes from the Soviet Union, because they don't want us to confront it. They want us to sit down and stay quiet.
So, and that's where you became an activist, basically. Right. Rather than watching it from a side, you actually want to move forward to become a warrior, from a witness to a warrior, basically. What kind of activism are you involved with right now?
So after I was doing those interviews, I started going and waking up the jihadi encampments at universities, because we can't let
waking
them
up in the morning, like
at
early
4
morning?
a.m. with my Israeli music and my flags, calling them terrorists, calling a spade, which is, like you said, Trump does exactly what's been missing from politics. We need to have a strong moral compass. And if we're confident in our moral compass, then we know what an enemy looks like.
Now, did you do it as a Jew or as an activist on behalf of the free world? Or
both. Very much both.
Did you have non-Jews joining you?
I did in some occasions, but it was mostly Jews, because I was in mostly Jewish circles. And when I was teaching Krav Maga, it was mostly to Jews. So it was mostly Jews that joined me, but it was very much on equal standing as a Jew and as an Israeli, standing for Israel, but also standing for the truth, standing for free society, standing for Europe and Britain and Judeo-Christian values, because it's not about Jews, it's not about Israel, and it's certainly not about these fake Palestinians. It's about the destruction of all the values we hold dear. It's about the destruction of free, democratic, Judeo-Christian society. And we have to wake America up to the mistakes of Europe, because Europeans are waking up, but there will not be a fix without a civil war. This will not happen. There will have to be.
Amazing. So you're basically saying Europe's hope is war, nothing else. And maybe then some world leader that will arise from Europe will bring peace. That will be something different. Now, you chose to leave and move to Israel. Leave the UK and move to Israel. Why? I mean, if you want to fight those things, why not staying there?
There was a lot of pull for me to come to Israel, but also quite a lot of push. The Islamist control in Britain, as we've discussed, is very, very gripping. People have been, and not just Islamists, but the socialists, people have been arrested for what they've said on social media, whilst these Islamist rape gangs walk the streets free. And the politicians which excused them and covered up for them also are still in positions of power. So it's not that I didn't really feel safe in the streets. I didn't, but I'm confident in my own body and skin and ability to defend myself. That wasn't the problem. The problem was I can't do the work that I really know I should be doing from the UK. Being arrested is a death sentence for a Jew.
Like Tommy Robinson.
He was put in solitary confinement for his own safety, supposedly. But he was arrested on stupid charges which were nothing to do with the reason the government wanted him locked away. And he's one of the most successfully demonized individuals in history. He's no angel, but I'm no angel. Who is an angel? Why did I leave? Is because Jews belong in Israel. Jews belong in Judea.
I was waiting for this.
We belong here.
There you
Let's
go.
Start with the start. Jews belong here. You mentioned the Jews should all be returning from the four corners of the earth.
Absolutely. And I think, and I really think that Israel is both a refuge place for the Jewish people, but also the front line in that battle for Western civilization. I think Netanyahu said that in almost every speech. He says, we fight for you, not only for ourselves. We're fighting for you, Europeans, for you, British, for you, Americans. This is where, if this line falls, that's it. And so we are barricading and we're pushing and we're standing firm here because we believe it's much more than just another country. It is, even for Islamic mindset, this is the link that they have to break first in order for the flood to go and wash off everything else. Now, do you feel like things are different here? People are different here? We take things differently here than in the UK or in Europe?
The perfect question, because honestly, probably the second most significant thing for me moving here was the difference in culture. I never really resonated with British culture so much, somewhat, but never wholly. I think the diaspora's biggest mistake, coming from comfort and complacency, is forgetting that we're not British Jews, we're not American Jews, we're certainly not German Jews. We're Jews residing in Germany, Britain, America. The culture is so different. And I wrote an article called Priorities, which is my Jewish lens on why Western society is going wrong and what we can learn from Israel and the Israelis. In the West, we have our priorities in the totally wrong order. We have our priorities as university degree, mortgage, pension, and that's shaped from our bubbles of society.
And that leads to them being satisfied with one child and seeing population decrease to the point, by the way, in the UK, it's terrible. I mean, it's less than 2 children per family.
It's closer to 1.
Yeah. But yet in the Islamic circles in the UK, it's almost 8. Oh,
3 point something. Almost 8.
Well, the numbers I posted today were staggering. You know what? Just a second.
It's been a few months since I checked, so the Islamists have been hard at work.
No, it's funny. I just posted about that today. There's a short video that really resonated with me about this thing. But then underneath the video, I actually, so here it is. Europe will fall in the next 100 years, warns Elliot.
That's kind.
Yes. And then he said civilization needs a fertility rate of 2.11 kids per but European countries are already flirting with extinction, he claims. England is 1.6, he says. Yes, but then he said something about France.
In large French cities, 45% of children under the age of 20 are Islamic now. At this rate, in 40 years, France...
40 years is nonsense.
That's it.
The world as we know it is just changing in a way that I feel is irreversible, and we're going to see the outcome of that eventually.
40 years is nonsense.
Yeah,
it's 5 years.
It's 5 years, yes. So we're talking about 8.1 in France. And as I said, almost half of the children under 12, I think, are now Muslims in France.
So this is what I'm talking about. Our priorities for life in Israel are completely different to the degree, mortgage, pension, societal delusion that we have in the West. That exists here, don't get me wrong, because we have our creature comforts from our luxury. Yeah. But we have the existential threat to remind us constantly that we must reproduce, we must protect ourselves, and we must fight the existential threat. We have to fight to survive. That's the reality.
That's what Golda Meir said. Golda Meir said, our secret is that we have no option.
Amazing.
This is it. I mean, she was very realistic. She said, this is it. We don't have any other option. This is what the secret is. When you have no other option, you fight.
That's it. And we've forgotten, we've got too intelligent for our own good as human beings, especially in the West. We think we've outgrown the number one priority, and or somehow we feel like our societies take care of that preservation of life number one.
Yes.
And that doesn't just mean oxygen, food and water. It means reproduction.
Yes.
It means protecting ourselves. And I'm a strong believer that self-defense should be in schools. We've lost our way in the West, and that's what I'm going from this rudimentary sort of one man unplanned fight, which I was doing in the streets of London, to I'm trying to turn this into a movement of changing culture. And Israel and Israelis and the Jewish people is supposed to be, the nation of Israel is supposed to be a light unto the nations. We're supposed to set the example. And like I said, we're setting the example for exactly how Western society has gone wrong. We're extremely complacent. You speak to some middle-class, affluent Jewish family, they're more afraid of picking up a gun and learning how to use it than the Islamist who lives opposite their front door.
Amazing.
Think of that reality for one moment. If you told that to an Israeli, I don't know if they'd laugh or cry or both. We have to change the culture to remember where our priorities are. And I think not only will that make us much happier, but it will make us preserve our societies, which are really are on the brink.
Within 2 years since the axis of evil vowed to bring utter destruction over Israel, to annihilate Israel, within 2 years, the entire leadership of Hamas is gone. The entire leadership of Hezbollah is gone. The Syrian regime is gone. The entire top brass of the Iranians is gone, and the entire government of the Houthis is gone. And I think that Israel today is the strongest it has ever been since it was born in 1948. We have Israeli troops in Lebanon, in Syria. We have Israeli troops in Judea, Samaria, and in Gaza. And we have Israeli undercover people on the ground in Iraq, in Iran, and in Yemen.
Love them.
Which tells you that the God of Israel is faithful to make sure that the enemy's plans to utterly destroy us will never come to pass. God said through the prophet Malachi, he said, I am God, I do not change. Therefore, you're not consumed, O sons of Jacob. Even when Israel was not faithful to God, and often they were not, yet God is faithful. And he said, I do not change. You may change. You may think I forgot you. Can a woman forget her nursing child? No. That's how I don't forget about you. I think it's good to connect people with, values and with the land and with the Zionist, principles. But my prayer is that the people will be connected back to their God also, and to their heritage, which is the Bible, which is so important. I think one of the biggest mistakes of Jewish people when they came to Israel in the 1920s and 30s, they started putting too much faith in their own ability to fight rather than God helping them. And before you know it, in the 1950s, Israel was super secular. And before you knew it, we began to worship our military and our politicians rather than our God. And then October 7th came, and in so many people's minds, the invincible, indestructible, and the super smart intelligence community of Israel was proven wrong. And I see now how there is an exodus of a lot of Israelis from hedonism, materialism, and secularism back to their roots. And that's, I think, one of the greatest things that I'm watching happening right now. Do you feel today in Israel, post October 7th, when you see everything, do you feel more spiritual, more connected?
I feel myself more spiritual and more connected. And I'm constantly developing that connection. I grew up traditional, but not religious. Judaism is the religion and being Jewish is the ethnicity. But they're unbreakably linked because this land is connected to God and this people. And absolutely, it's amazing what facing directly an existential threat will do to bring you closer to God.
Yes.
People always say that on their deathbed they see the Lord, they see God, they see a higher power, and I think that's 100% the truth. I think it's essential that we reconnect to the Torah and the Bible. And
do you understand that when you see Christians supporting Israel, it's because they believe in the rights of the Jewish people over the land due to what the Word of God says. It's not that they were born Zionist or they're just pro-Israelis. in their nature, they have this strong conviction based on the Bible that this is the land of Israel. And that's the God of Israel that brought the people of Israel to the land of Israel, because he has hope and future for them, as in Jeremiah 29 it says. So it's, and that's, I think, when you said Judeo-Christian values, those values are based on the Bible and nothing less than that. And I think the horrific illiteracy that I see in Bible, pure Bible. I mean, people don't even know the Bible nowadays. They cannot even pull verses and say, look, this is what I may think, this is what he may think, but that's what the Word of God says. And you know, you said earlier, fact check me about you. I'm telling you, fact check me about God's word, his promises, and where we are today. And I dare every person that is watching this, this is not a coincidence. It's not like Israel was weak and now we became strong because we train our soldiers better. No, the God of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps, and he is there fighting for his people because, as he said, he is the same. He does not change, and we're not to be consumed. And the enemy needs to learn the hard way, I guess. I mean, I always tell people, if the Bible says in the book of Jeremiah that as long as the sun, the moon, and the stars are there, Israel is a nation before me, then stop trying to destroy us. And if you do want to destroy us, then aim your guns and missiles to the sun, the moon, and the stars. Because only when they will no longer be there, then Israel will no longer be there. So we have to hold on to these promises, because these promises eventually are the promises that we see the fruits thereof. And look, we don't have, it's not like overnight the general staff of the IDF is now the perfect one, or the internal security service is the perfect one, and our government is the perfect. No, but he's the same. He's the same. He will remain the same. And that's the same God that, you know, kept a remnant throughout Egypt and throughout the wandering in the desert, and even in the land, even in diaspora, and when he brought us, even through the Holocaust, when he brought us from that valley of dry bones. So I want to, ask you, if you're going to America very soon and you started speaking tours right now, more and more, what is it that you have, what message do you have to Americans, for example? You're a British, I know that in Britain, in Europe, maybe they won't even listen to you, but Americans will listen to you. What message do you have for them?
First of all, we have to learn from Europe. I think Americans are not shy about their opinions on what's going on in Europe. I think everyone knows. Maybe they don't particularly want to admit it or really take on what's going on, because it's very much going on their own doorstep and they're not doing so much about it. I think the miracle of Trump getting back into the office, and it's nothing short of a miracle,
I agree with you.
It's taken very much for granted, just like all of our so-called basic freedoms and the abundance which we have enjoyed for a number of decades now. But the main message which I'm coming with is that the vast majority of human history is tyranny, brutality, poverty, famine, all of these horrible things. The vast majority. We have 1.5 million years roughly of humans which have had a relatively similar DNA structure and intelligence level to ours. And roughly 60 of those years have been with this level of comfort. And we're at risk of squandering it and throwing it away to tyranny, brutality, and an ungodly movement. Whether it is the Islamists, they might think they're godly, but they are run by an evil and murderous prophet, or the socialists, and we know that they're ungodly. We have to understand our privilege, and I think that that world travel really gave me that perspective to understand just what an anomaly and a blip in time we're living in right now. Not just that the Jews have Israel, that's a blip in time in itself, but the fact that we can order food and turn the air conditioning on, it's just, we're living in this dreamlike world, and we're in a dream. We are dreaming, and even though the enemy is on our doorstep, we're stuck in this dream, and we have to go back to our priorities, learn from the nation of Israel, because the moment Israel forgot its priorities and started being distracted by internal conflict, internal political conflict, it was reminded that it doesn't have another choice, as you said.
Yeah. We started on a personal level, and I want to end on a personal level. We're going to land right now back to the suburbs of London, where your family lives. What do they think about what you're doing now? And what do you think about them still living there? And the last question is, what is your message to them? If they were to watch this right now, what would you tell them?
So first of all, I love them very dearly, all of them. And I'm grateful that they're moving out of London, but I think that's just them avoiding the real problem. I think they've spent 5 or 6 decades of their life in the UK and in Britain as proud Brits. They consider themselves as British Jews, and I think that's their comfort and unfortunately complacency, allowing them to feel as though they're assimilated. That's exactly how.
Do you have siblings?
I have an older sister and a younger brother, yes.
And what do they think about you and what you do and your calling?
They think I'm crazy. But you know what they say, crazy is often right just too soon. And I love them very dearly, and I wish I could have a deeper conversation with them about these topics, but it's difficult. Yeah, it's a very emotional topic for me, because I'm very, very nervous and worried about the future of Europe. I think it is only a violent one, as I've mentioned.
Do you see they don't see things the way you see things? In other words, the danger that is looming in Europe and the UK, do you think they're indifferent to it? Or do you think they try to hide it?
I think they tried to hide from it somewhat.
But so they are concerned, but they don't think moving to Israel is the answer.
Yeah, they're definitely concerned. I'm not sure how much they would understand of it if it wasn't for me. And they've told that to me. And I'm grateful that they do listen to me. They really do, because I'm very pushy. But luckily I'm very persuasive as well. And they hadn't visited Israel in 30 years before I made Aliyah, before I moved here.
Wow.
And I'm grateful that they have visited me twice since.
Do they see any change in you since you moved here?
Change in me? I think they see that I'm much, much happier, much more myself, and that I belong here. They've seen that I've really assimilated. I really wish that they see that. I think they do admit somewhat in themselves that there's no future. But they are so comfortable in their Britishness and in the structure of society. That's what I'm going to America to talk about. We are so comfortable with our societal luxuries and structures, be them the luxuries of ordering food or the luxuries of freedom of speech. Britain has lost freedom of speech, and America needs to be really terribly shaken by that reality, because whether you like it or not, Americans, we're the origin story. And I always say that Britain needed that 2.0 in our culture. We really did, because we take ourselves a bit too seriously, amongst a plethora of other issues.
Yes.
But America has to be shaken, not terrified, because being terrified makes you paralyzed, and the Jews are a good example for that. When you have an existential threat, there is only a few valid options, and it's not freeze or fawn. For the Jews, it's fight or flight. And the Jews that are staying in the diaspora, the vigils and the galas, it's not enough. You have to fight. Yeah. And if you're not interested in fighting, you should be setting the example for the other Jews by leaving and making Aliyah. It's not leaving. That's not fleeing. That's making Aliyah and coming home. Exactly. Or you should be setting the example to the British people or to the American people and fighting the evil that we are faced with.
I always like to remind people that Nehemiah, he was in the palace of King Cyrus, and He had a pretty comfortable life. The king loved him. But the king saw how sad he is. He says, why are you so sad, Nehemiah? He said, how can I be happy when my city and my country are in ruins? And the king said, okay, so what do you want to do? He says, would you allow me to go and rebuild it? And the king said, well, I will, as long as you come back here, because I need you here. But he felt, the king could feel, the king of the greatest empire of those days could feel that the Jew away from Israel feels depressed and a fish out of his water tank. And so he sent him, and on the way, chapter 2, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, the Horonite, Ammonites, and the Arab, looked at Nehemiah and they mocked him. And you know what he answered? He said, you can mock me as much as you want, but it's because you have no heritage, no right, and no memorial in Jerusalem. That's why you will never understand us. Hundreds of years before Islam was even born, a Jew who made his way from Persia back to the land is being ridiculed by Arabs for loving a ruined city. And it's because they have no clue why this city is so important. And I think that that's the same problem today. People underestimate the importance of the land and of that city to the Jewish people. And nowadays, 2,500 years later, I wish Jewish people will start feeling once again uncomfortable and depressed for being away, and tell everyone around we cannot be happy unless we're back where we belong, because we're the only ones to whom God gave rights, memorial, and heritage in that place. And I think you got it already. I think that thing clicked in you. And I pray that it will happen to your parents, to your siblings, to the Jewish people in the UK, to the Jewish people in Europe, and believe it or not, to the Jewish people in America also. I think eventually the Jews must be back. And I will be bold even saying that there's enough room for all the Jews here. The Negev is big. Even Gaza is ours. I think Gaza has to be resettled by Jewish people.
Well, I say all the time, Jews to Judea now. We are
Absolutely.
from Judea. Some of the most significant parts of our history are in Judea and Samaria.
Absolutely. But I want to encourage you, don't feel the one that is not normal or the one that is, different. This is exactly how every Jew should feel. And those that don't have it, they need to have their ways changed. They need to get back to their roots. And as I said, all I did is quoting the Bible. That's the thing. That's what most people lack, is the understanding and the knowledge of the Word of God that will give them finally the understanding of their purpose also as Jewish people now. So, Sammy, I want to thank you for being our guest here at the Anker-Podcast. And I want to tell you that in the lower third of this screen right now, we're going to have your social media details that will allow people know where you are, what you do. So I want to encourage people to follow Sammy. It's very important work. And wherever you are, when you see Jewish people, love them, pray for them, and remind them that this is where they belong. Until next time, I want to thank everyone for watching this Anchor podcast. Share it with as many people as you can. Thank you, and God bless you from Galilee, Israel.